Welcome back to the Locker Room Podcast. This is podcast number 52. I'm Joe Coulter and I'm here with my co-host, Stevie Poacher. We're going to have a good chat with Paul Broderick and Cathal Cregg today, both recent inter-county retirees with Carlow and Roscommon, respectively. Stevie and I will pick through their minds about their views on modern-day coaching, about their future plans as well. But before we do that, just a quick thanks to our sponsors, Ripped, for supporting the podcast. Rip's online platform provides coaches with everything they need to optimize athlete performance. Head over to rip.app for more information. Okay, Cathal, thanks for coming on. We'll start with you. Was it a difficult decision to hang your boots up after 16 years with Roscommon?
No, I'd say personally for myself, it wasn't. I probably I had the decision made before the start of the season gone by, and I suppose I just came to the point in my life or career that I suppose that maybe I just didn't have the full spark to go at it. So I just felt it was the right time for myself, So in the end, I didn't find it that hard, but I suppose after a long time, it wasn't that difficult a decision, I suppose.
And just looking through the amount of appearances you made for Roscommon, 165 appearances, and I think you've scored something like 24 goals and 184 points for Roscommon. I'm sure Roscommon will miss that for the next few years.
Yeah, look, I've been lucky enough throughout the career, bar early on in my career, that I didn't pick up a whole pile of injuries and that. But I suppose in the latter part of my career, I probably wasn't as prolific as maybe the middle part. I had different roles and so on. They might miss me on the scoring front. There are plenty of scoring forwards, but maybe if some of them don't like doing the donkey work, I suppose that's what I would put at.
Joe, I was going to say, I think one of the reasons he retired was the 3 months he had me just finished him.
I didn't want to say that in the podcast.
And Stevie, of course, has coached both of the lads. Just moving on to you there, Paul. What about your retirement? I think you were there with Carlow for 14 years, was it?
Well, it probably spanned the 14-year period, but I did the last 8 or 9 in a row, and then it was sporadic the first part of my career for a number of different reasons. But yeah, I was in there consistently from kind of 2013-14 until now.
And I was going to say there, you done an interview there recently as well. You said that it was until you were sort of 26 or 27 that you took sort of inter-county football seriously.
Sorry, yeah, after I was 26 or 27, I kind of a late bloomer that way. I suppose I was playing a couple of other things, and I was kind of enjoying life, and I always kind of put it off, saying I'll definitely go in and I'll give it a go. And it wasn't that it didn't appeal to me. It was just then, I suppose, one stage it just dawned on me. I'm like, I'm gone past the middle of my 20s now. This is supposed to be your prime. But in other words, I better hit the ground running if I'm going to go in. So, yeah, it was just kind of when I did kind of buy into it. I was always looking from the outside, going, that's a serious amount of commitment and whatever. And when I did buy into it, I did feel. I probably mentioned in the same interview, like I felt like I couldn't get enough of it. And it's only really a recent thing, a little bit like Cathal said there. It was a decision. I didn't come to it very quickly. Like I thought about it from the end of last season. I was kind of weighing up the pros and the cons, and I just felt it was the right time for me to step away.
And lads, we'll just go through the sort of highlights of your career there quickly. Paul, you were twice named.
They'll be fairly quick for me anyway, Joe.
Not too bad. You were twice named a GPA Player of the Year, May 2017, May 2018. Obviously, that was around the time of Carlow rising under Turlough and Stevie there. Would those have been your personal highlights, and obviously the sort of team highlights? What would they have been for you?
Yeah, I suppose if you go up to the 2017 one, we played Wexford, and Carlow hadn't won a Leinster Championship game in, I think that was 2017. So 6 years since we'd won a Leinster Championship game, and Stevie had his prime. To be fair to him, we'd disappointment in the league. We'd defeat to London and Leitrim, and we finished with 3 wins in the league, and knew that we had a performance in us. So we played Wexford then in a kind of a high scoring game at home, and we drew a big crowd, probably because it was a long time again since we won 3 games in a row in the league, and that for personally probably like that was a game I'd pick out. Like a lot of people might have said, well, Wexford were in your division, you might have expected to beat them, but it was a game I'd pick out where one of those games where kind of things, nothing went wrong, and I don't think I've ever had a game like it where everything I just tried came off, and that personally is probably a highlight and was probably maybe the reason for that particular award. But yeah, 2018 from a team point of view was probably the year I'd say that, you know, was the major highlight, because you had the trip to Antrim where we got promoted in the league, and you had the win against Coulter, which was the first time in 60 odd years that Carlow had beaten them. So to be part of those two things, like, you know, in playing a team sport, I would find that, you know, even though you're proud of your individual accolades, like the team ones are the ones you remember, and they're the ones you're going to share forever. Even, you know, you meet up with friends or meet up with lads, past lads with a panel, or even current lads, like they're the things you reminisce about. You'll always have your own personal memories, but yeah, those highs, the Kildare and the Antrim day were pretty special.
Joe, can I just add in there? Just want to correct Paul there, because he said in the Wexford game that it was one of those games everything he did went right, but he forgot to tell you that he also got sent off in that game. He probably forget that.
Do yellow, Stevie. Do yellow.
Was he a fiery type of character, Paul or Stevie, when you coached him? What was he like in training?
I tell you one thing though, Joe, he had a bit of bite about him, but I'll tell you what, he'd no bite when you went into a pub or a restaurant, because his wallet never smelled of fat. No bite in that respect. No, listen, Paul was a gem to work with, and I was just looking here at the stats of the two boys. Like Cathal, obviously 24 goals and 184 points, and Paul obviously had his own contribution of 13 goals and 316 points. And I said to him before, like, you know, I was very fortunate to work with some great footballers as a coach, like, and, you know, very few left footers. Obviously Martin Clark being the highlight for me, you know, 10 years ago with Marty at club level, like, but you know, Paul's left foot was as good as one of I've ever seen anyway, you know, from a striker of the ball, and struck the ball so clean, and great attitude of training, great attitude to life, and a top lad, just like Cathal there, you know. And probably, you know, Cathal will probably be the first to admit as well, like, you know, he's had a few medals and a few trophies for the end of his career. It's probably harder for players like Paul as well, you know, when you're trawling around the lower leagues and don't get the same exposure. And I think over the last couple of years, as you talked about Paul's career there, he rightly got the just rewards and the accolades that he fully deserved, and fair play to him, you know.
Yeah, and just Cathal, yourself there, just what Stevie was saying about those iconic championship medals you had. You also represented Ireland there in 2014. What have been the highlights? What the main highlight for you?
Yeah, I suppose the two, definitely the three of them you're after mentioning. The two Connacht titles, I suppose to be special in different ways, really. In 2010, there wasn't much expected of us. We were after getting relegated to Division 4 at the time, and we came out and we had a really good championship, and that was obviously my first Connacht title, and you know, that's always a special thing. And I suppose that group of players, I would have felt maxed out, like, you know, there was just a great team, I suppose, cohesion, and everyone just, I suppose, going in the one direction, really, like. And then in 2019, you know, we came up through the divisions, and you know, we had brought a lot of good young players through, and we were probably, I suppose, peaking at that point. And like to beat Mayo and Galway, the big two in Connacht traditionally, beat them away from home, that was a special one as well. You know, that has only ever been done twice in Roscommon's history. So that was obviously a big highlight in terms of achievement. And yeah, getting to go on that international rules trip in 2014 was class. Like, you know, I was 10 years living basically as a professional player out in Perth in Australia, the lifestyle and the beaches and the sun and so on. You know, I'd missed out on the year previous. It came close enough, and then made it in 14 and got the trip. Like, so, like, you know, I was even chatting some of the lads last week when it was announced, like texting a few of them and that. Like, so it was just, that was I suppose a great period in my life as a player. Like, you know.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask you there, Cathal, do you have any kind of regrets, or Paul, do you have any kind of regrets just looking back over your career, things that you could have done better or anything?
I suppose you'd always have the regret, like the last number of years there, particularly probably in 19, like that we didn't push on, like, and maybe make an All-Ireland semi-final and so on. You know, we were we were quite close. We ran in the Super 8s, we ran Tyrone very close in the hide, and if we had won that, we'd have probably made a semi-final. You know, we had a couple of very good goal chances in the first half. Been a couple of chances like that to push on and break the ceiling in terms of getting to a semi-final, and I think there was enough talent in the county to do that, but ultimately we didn't or haven't done it. You know, that'd be a regret for me.
And yourself, Paul?
Yeah, I suppose ones I would be in control of, like regrets. I've mentioned it. Like I probably, part of me wishes I would love to know if you could live a double life and see what it would have been like to be something like Cathal and go in from maybe when you're 18 or 19. The opportunity was there, and while I took it up to very begin with, I then went on to college in Galway, and I didn't really grasp it. Like I was in and out until I was 26 or 27, and I'd love to know where the journey might have taken me. Had I gone into, and I really admire lads who do it for that long, because it's a serious commitment. Like, you know, you're going to have years, like, you know, dry years, you're going to have good years. And I think to stick with it for that long and be the workhorse some years when you need to be, and when others are not committing, like it takes serious commitment. Probably a regret that I'd no real control of was the year we got up to Division 3 in 2018, and I didn't really get to play any of that league, our championship. I didn't really get to play at all in 2019. I tore. We played one game. We beat Sligo in the first game, and then the warm-up against Westmeath. We were away to Westmeath in our second game, and we drew that game. But I tore a calf in the warm-up, missed the next 3 games, and then came back and tore the calf in training before the second or third last game. The opposite calf, and I bookended the league. I got to play against Sligo and against Laois, and we lost against Laois in the final day by a couple of points and went back down. And I suppose the regret is that. I didn't get to be involved, but on a larger scale, I suppose we went back down, and I suppose Stephen would probably add to this. I never really felt that I won't say we didn't deserve to go back down. You get what you deserve in that sense, but I think that we were level on points with Offaly. For it to come down to head when we had so many tight games, I think another year in that division, and we possibly could have made strides to get back up, or to, you know, we were at the end of a group of players where lots of lads were given a long commitment. And like I was only looking at the other day, we played Dublin in 2017 in championship, and there's only 3 players left for Carlow now on the squad that started that game. I suppose that was kind of the end of when lads started to peter off a little bit in 2019. It just would have been nice to get to play that full year, number one, but more importantly to stay in that division and possibly go up. I think we had the players to do it.
Stevie, how important is it for managers, inter-county managers, to try and keep, you know, these older players on board? I know the boys had sort of 14, 16 years, you know, playing for the county. How important is it to try and keep these players, you know, keep their experience, keep their accumulation of knowledge, and try to help the young lads to come in?
Joe, I had this conversation the other day with James McCartan. Like, you know, James is obviously taking the reins here and down. You know, hats off to him. You know, last minute job, and James, as James has always done, has answered the call. Fair play to him. And we just had this conversation, and it's ironic we've got the 2 boys on tonight, because it's going to lead me into a question to Cathal and Paul here. But we chatted about the commitment levels that's needed now, you know, in the current climate and, you know, in the current game, but also the desire to play for the county. You know, like when you were a youngster and you were growing up, it was always everyone's aspirations to be there and to play, and it was so difficult, like, you know, so many years ago. And now there's just so many different pathways now to inter-county football for young players, through school, through development squads and things like that. But one thing, like, it struck a chord to me. Like, I remember speaking to Cathal, probably Cal, I don't know if you remember this, but we're having a bit of a light conversation on the pitch before we played Armagh in that playoff game, and we're just chatting in general, like, and it really struck a chord to me. And we're talking about social lives, and I remember saying to you, like, the last time you had a beer, and I think you had said to me, like, it was New Year's Eve or something, you know, and this was like the fucking end of June, like, or the middle of June, you know. And I was thinking to myself, Jesus, mine was Wednesday night, you know. And then I was thinking, this is New Year's Eve. But it shows you the difference, Joe, in commitment levels. And I think what scares a lot of players now is that, you know, that commitment, you know. And Paul talked about his sort of regret of maybe not committing, you know, at an earlier age in the same way as he did in his latter years. And I just maybe wanted to ask that question to the 2 lads. Like, you know, it was obviously, Cathal and Paul, a huge, like, lifestyle change for you, like just a huge, complete, just sacrifice of family, friends, holidays, the whole lot. Like, would it be right in saying that? Or have you noticed that, Cathal, from the time you started to more recently, has it become even more engrossing and committed? Like,
Yeah, I suppose, look, I started back, whatever it was, 2006. It was probably a slow burner, at that time. There was probably still the culture of, drinking a bit more. I was in college, you were getting away with it, but it was a thing around that time, lads would go out after games. There was definitely a lot more drinking involved, and then it probably into, from probably when I left college and that, I would have gone ultra serious in terms of preparation and recovery and all that side of things, probably to a point where I was probably nearly to the detriment of my performance. I'd say I was probably over preparing and underperforming in a game, in games. I was doing everything and then not actually going out and delivering on the day because maybe I thought that it was just going to happen type of thing, whereas I should have focused on that. Whereas probably since we've had the kids, they put a bit of structure on your life a bit more. They, you can't be going off doing ice baths and you can't be going off doing this, that, and the other. And I found maybe over the last 4 or 5 years that sometimes you have to come home in the evening and you put your feet up maybe when they're gone to bed and you watch a bit of telly, whereas I probably would have been driving down to Carrick and Shannon up to Roscommon doing an ice bath and doing whatever, and maybe I didn't need to be doing that. So I think it probably fluctuated throughout my career, and at different points you just have to try and find it's all about balance, I would say.
And what about yourself, Paul, on that in terms of commitment? Coming towards the end of your career, was that kind of the main reason why it's sort of difficult to stay on?
It was probably one of, for me, there was no major reason. It was lots of small things, and I would say it was one of the small things. Just to kind of hit on what Cathal said there, I would find that there's times I've come full circle. So I've done the thing where I don't drink for months or whatever, but and I've done the thing where I do all the stuff properly, and again probably some little bit of over preparation at times, and again it nearly leads to an anxiety. Then the days that you don't go to the gym or you don't do whatever, you feel like I haven't kind of reached my goals or whatever, and I felt what works best for me, and I probably realized this a little bit later than most, but once I'm happy in what's going on, so in my relationships with my family, with it's reaching a level of happiness where if I before I wasn't happy unless I was doing something every day. And if I look at some of maybe the poorest stints of play I've had over 1 or 2 months, I was probably doing more training than any time, but I wasn't managing it very well. And I was probably going training just to kind of, just to take it and say I did it for another day, whether it was kick and freeze or whatever it was. I do think it's all about balance, and balance for everybody is a little bit different. You'd have worked with or coached with or played with players whereby they need a different length of rope than others. And some people need to be training all the time, and others, I've talked to Shane Redmond, who's recently retired from Carlow football as well. And Shane, we would have always spoke about this before games, being close. He'd talk about he likes a good week of training leading up. And Stephen would happily tell you, but 10 days out, I'd be happy. I won't say not to kick a ball, but if I didn't see the field 10 days before a game, I'd be feeling better and better each day, and that my body would be almost, I suppose, repairing itself. And that's something I probably wouldn't have realized before. And I think it's different for each individual, but it's very hard. And I know it's probably a question that'll come up. It's very hard for a coach or a manager to get that right, to get that balance. It's something probably learned over time, to get that balance with players, that you do give lads a little bit of different leeway in terms of what they're doing, and advice, advising them. I can only advise someone what I found worked well for me, but I know of other stuff that's worked well for others. I know lads who will consistently train all of the time and it works well for them. But I think as life goes on, you get a little bit older, you kind of derive happiness from different things in life. And for me, once I'm happy, I always play it at my best.
Would you agree with that, Stevie? Do you think it's sort of time that managers sort of manage their players differently and give boys some leeway? I know they're afraid to do it because you're sort of thinking, you can't do that for one player and not do it for another player.
Joe, I said this a couple of weeks ago to somebody. I think it's very close to the game going mad a wee bit, and with the commitment levels. I know here, for a fact, there's counties here in Ulster that are back training flat out, like flat out, 5-6 days a week at the present moment in time, S&C sessions, pitch sessions, meetings, one-to-ones. It's factual, like, it's happening, like, and you're just thinking to yourself, like, sometimes you actually take a step back. Cathal talked about that glass ceiling with Roscommon, trying to break into that All-Ireland semi-final, right? Could Roscommon have gone on and win an All-Ireland? In the current climate, possibly not. And that's no disrespect to the players, but there's a number of things there. Like, Cal, you'd probably agree with me here as well. Like, for example, let's look at the players that are based in Dublin. Even there must be 14, 15 lads that are having to travel back twice a week from Dublin. I've done the journey. I know what it's like from Dublin. Like, and it's you're hitting traffic on the N7 or whatever M6. I don't know what motorway it is, but you're hitting traffic going west, and it's a big commitment on the body. It's a big demand on the body. Then you're traveling home. You're traveling back to Dublin, then you're getting up, you're doing a day's work, and there's other counties that things are just so much more stacked in their favour financially, logistically, numbers wise. And I just feel sometimes we need to look and we need to think, right, are we going to win this? Are we going to do that? So you want to sort of bring the fun back. And I think Paul would probably be the first to admit this. Like, we probably, when we were down with Carlow, like, we never knew we were going to win a Leinster title, but I think, Paul, we got the balance right. I think we got the balance right between enjoyment, fun, recreational, and taking it serious as well. Like, we did our video work, we had our meetings, like, but listen, we had our training camps and we had our few beers and we had our pints after matches, and, with a great camaraderie and a great spirit. And I would look back in those days very, very fondly, for the rest of my days, because, yes, you got the promotion and you had a couple of big days out, you had a couple of big wins, but we knew we were never going to win Leinster. We knew we were never going to win an All-Ireland, but you made progress and you made gains, and that's a huge thing. And I think, Joe, we need to look at the level of commitment and what's been asked of players, because it's become hugely extreme now. I think it's gone to the other end now. I really, really do. I think the fun is just being absolutely drained out of the game at the present moment in time, all chasing that little bit extra. And really and truly, in my honest opinion, there's probably only really 3 or 4 counties can win it, if you're being realistic, like, and that's down to a number of factors. Like for example, in Tyrone, like I know from the in-laws and speaking to them, like, the structures that's going on, like, the structures in Tyrone are just at a different scale. Like, at underage level, the way the development squads are monitored, there's a teacher in school, there's young lads involved at the minute in the development squads. He's filling me in on what's going on and how well they're organised and what's, there's so much good working on, and that takes years and years, Joe, to get to that level, and listen, it's even the school structure in Tyrone. Like, speaking to a teacher tonight there, and like, look at Holy Trinity. Holy Trinity's playing in the McCrory Cup, which is the marquee competition, right? In their school, they've got Kevin O'Boyle, former Antrim player. They've got John McKeever, one of the top coaches in Ulster. They've got Kieran McGeary, the current footballer, one of the current footballers of the year. They've Peter Kianavan, it's Owen Mulligan's former school. Like, they've got just an array of teachers who are driving GAA. Like, it's a football mad, and that's happening everywhere. And I know, Cathal, in your role as Connacht GAA manager, like, you probably see, what the work that goes on and the work that's needed just to get to what you're trying to get to at the top level. And it takes a huge amount of work, Joe, and a huge sacrifice and commitment. And I think, personally, at the minute, what's separating the really top teams, and the boys can come in this and let me know their views on it, I'd be keen to hear it. What's really separating the top teams from the next gap is the level of physical conditioning. And I think that is a huge barrier that a lot of teams can't get to at the minute. And there's reasons for that,
Danny, and if you want to come in on that.
Yeah, well, I a couple of things there. I think when you were talking about Carlow, Steve, it just struck a chord. As in, I suppose there was nothing done that was mindless, in that there was always a reason for the things you might do, and there was a culture created probably for the first time when I was in there. Since I've been in there, like, where everyone understood, lads were faced with moral decisions, maybe ethical decisions at times, where they knew what was achievable for us, and that goal, the big goal, was to get out of Division 4, and we knew what we had to do to get it. I suppose we were trying to match up levels of enjoyment and kind of team camaraderie. We had all the players that we wanted in, and then to get to that next level and to get out of Division 4, we kind of knew what was being asked for. So there were times that lads might have gone for a drink after a game before, and it just wasn't happening that year. But I don't think it was down to anyone asking you not to do it. More a culture of, lads, can you kind of feel the bigger picture here of what's happening, and this is why it's happening. Like, with regard to getting to a certain level, like, I certainly feel that there are barriers, and a lot of those barriers are around finance, with different counties in terms of like take for example, and it's no slight at Carlow because the powers that be in Carlow do all that they can with what they have at their disposal. But like Carlow still doesn't have a gym, for example, like a county gym. There's a makeshift version underneath the stand in our county grounds, but it's not as if it's open any day to go there. It's used for group sessions, and that's really it. But in our centre of excellence, if you want to call it that, like out in Fenna, there's no gym out there. So you could be out for a 4-week period and you'd only love to be, you could be out there 3 nights a week. You could have 12 gym sessions done, but the equipment just isn't there. So you're relying on, there's membership in a couple of different hotels and stuff like that. But if you're supposed to be attending training, but you're also supposed to be doing recovery, well, that's another hour and a half maybe throughout the day. And I just think a lot of that is down to finance and structures. And I don't have the answer to that. Maybe I'd say Carl could probably shed some light on that in the type of role that he's in. But I know that in Carlow, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I suppose like look at the fitness levels as Stevie mentioned there is it's a huge thing. Like, and the top teams are no doubt more conditioned, better conditioned. But I suppose there's several factors to that as well. Like Stevie mentioned, in terms of there's only a handful of teams that are, I suppose, realistically able to win the All Ireland, and the reality is they're keeping their squads together and their players together for longer periods of time, in terms of, year after year after year. And them fitness levels don't happen in, 12 or 18 months. It takes 3, 4, 5, 6 years of constant progression for players to get to that level. And then I suppose the icing on the cake is the skill levels. Like I would have, even though Dublin's physical conditioning was outstanding, like I know from the few times we played them, like the one thing that really struck me was their skill execution. Like no matter what, kick out press you put on them, no matter what you'd done, they were always able to execute the basic skills of the game really, really well. Like they could, if you went pushed up on them, to kick out across you. If you sat back, they'd run through you. Like their skill level was awesome. And I was only at one game this year of Tyrone's, it was the All Ireland final. I was sitting up at the end, the canal end there, like, and their composure on the ball this year was just phenomenal. Like in the final, like I still think it comes down to the team that has the best decision makers and the best skill level, because I think the teams at the top level, they're all well conditioned. They're at quite a good level. And it comes down to the skill levels with the players there. Like I just remember in the All Ireland final, it was phenomenal. Even at the end, the way Tyrone kept the ball over and back to the keeper. He was like a quarterback, just popping the ball out. Like so. So look at it's a tough one. I suppose going back to the structures, like Paul has said. Like a lot of these issues, I suppose it's finance, it's structures, it's population. There's no one thing that you can put your finger on, and it's up to every county then to look after that,
Yeah, Joe, that's a very interesting comment Cal made there, and Paul will probably remember this as well. Like I remember going down to Garvaghey like in the winter of 2017 to play a challenge match. It was unheard of for Tyrone to play a challenge match, but there was some connection via Turlock and Mickey Hart or something via a friend, and we got a game with them in Garvaghey. And Cal, let's just to back up what you said there. I remember sort of a lot of the lads sort of saying, "What sort of team will Tyrone have out?" But there was going to be no issue or no discussion of what team they would out. It was going to be their first team because he ran with the panel, Cal. Every year there was no trialists come in. There was no 30 men come in for the McKenna Cup. Like that's one of the reasons why they won 14 McKenna Cups in a row or something mad. Like, because now they'll probably not win it this year because they're on holiday. But the fact of the matter is, they played their strongest team, Joe, because that's what they were. They had a squad, they had a panel, and very, very few players ever left it. And if they did leave it, there was one or two replaced them, or somebody mightn't have replaced them. So keeping a panel together, the same group of players, like listen to what Paul said there now. And Joe, our own county, look at our own county, the turnover of players every year and down. Like, that's why there's questions. That's why it's happening, because you're bringing in lads now. And like, I know for a fact now that the boys are back training or doing bits and pieces of trial work. Like, you've got about 15 new faces there this year again, and those lads are starting off at a club level fitness, like, and trying to get to a level of fitness where these lads have been at for for the guts of, as Cathal says, there 6-7 years. Joe, I'm just surprised Cathal never mentioned the challenge game Roscommon played against Tyrone the week before the championship. Cathal ran riot down for Fermanagh against them. Ran riot, but I'm surprised he didn't mention that, actually. You know what I mean? I thought he was going to come on that.
Went there and pulled my groin.
You mentioned there, Cathal, you know, about the skill levels and, you know, the physical attributes that these top teams have and decision making and so on. We've got 500 coaches on our WhatsApp groups. How much of developing a team is down to good coaching, or what do you think good coaching is?
Yeah, like good coaching is huge, like in it. And no more than what we're talking about with the preparation of ourselves individually as players. Like I think simplicity with it is key. You know, I think sometimes as coaches, we like I obviously do coaching through work and so on, have a lot of engagement with it. I think sometimes we probably overcomplicate it. I think the other thing we probably need to do is regard whatever group you're at, you have to go and meet the group wherever they're at. Like, you know, it's not just a case of, you know, I have a certain way of playing or I have a certain way of preparing a player or a team and they're going to do what I want to do. You probably have to go and meet the player where they're at, whether that's an inter-county team. You won't do the same thing as you will with a club senior team or a club junior team. You know, it's the same as if you go into a nursery with a 7-year-old. You have to go back and meet the player where they're at. Like, and even with a 7-year-old, you can have a really good 7-year-old or a poor 7-year-old. So I think selecting your activities then based around that, and the rest of it then is around, you know, building good communication, relationship with players, and Paul mentioned it earlier, creating a culture where the player understands where they sit in it, and that ultimately the player wants to learn themselves, you know, and they want to become better at every aspect of the game, you know. So they're probably keeping it simple and going and meeting the player where they're at. I think they're their foundation and everything that we should be doing.
And yourself there, Paul. Paul, what was kind of the best thing that you were ever coached, or what do you think makes a good training session, or what do you think helped you in your career in terms of people coaching you?
Well, under Stevie, I rarely touched the ball because it was down the other end. Lads were hand passing it around. But I know, all joking aside, it was for me, it was enjoyment, and I hugely enjoyed that period. But if I look at any training that I like, any period in my life where whether football was going well or not, like I had plenty of years at Carlow that weren't going well, and I really enjoyed traveling to training, and for me that was enjoyment. Now what I get out of it and what others get out of it might be different, but like I do remember a friend of mine saying before, and you might say, well, he's not much of a friend, but I remember a guy saying to me before, we were in Tesco one day, and he said to me, how do you do it? I don't get how you do it. We're just passing in the he said, you're going back in with the county, how do you do it? And this was maybe, I don't know, 2014 or 15. And like for me, it's, I suppose, like it's I don't know, like a lifelong learning thing. Like Carl touched on it there. Like, do I want to keep learning? And most, like, learning is not, for me, it's not linear. Like, as in I would look at, like, I would have 3 good months of learning something, and then you have a failure and you go a bit backwards. But like, you just know that, right, I've hit a wall, I need to come back and turn a different direction. And like, I know that sounds a bit complex at a juvenile level, and I think it is. And I think the big thing for juvenile is enjoyment and kind of, I won't say goal setting, but letting them know what looks like better play. Do you know what I mean? So like making it focused on, look, if you were able to get the ball and each time you got it, this was the first up. Like one of the, you know, quick quips like head up, look forward, like I think is one of the most important things that you can teach a young player, that the first time they get the ball, like, you know, the ball will move quicker than anything else. And if head up, look forward it's in all the good teams. It's in your Dublins, Tyrones, your Roscommons, all the teams you look at and you see, like, you see them kind of, the minute they get the ball, the first option is to move it as quick as possible forward. Like, it doesn't always work that way, but I think little things like that can be taught to kids that they would, and even to adults, like it depends again what level you get them at. If you come in and they've been there for 6 years working together, this stuff is probably stuff that you're long past. You're then on to maybe tactical stuff to break down teams you're going to play. But if you're looking at things to improve and improve quickly, like it's those little things. But I say quickly, they don't happen overnight. Carl touched on it earlier, like it's kind of, it could take months for some of this stuff to click, but it's when you can maybe use a bit of video to show, look at what you did there. And I'll go back to what I said. Does the player understand what looks like good play from their position? And quite often, what seems like good play on paper, like a forward getting 5 points. I take the example of, I'm not a United fan now, but lads always talk about Ronaldo, and I was talking with a guy in school the other day, and we were kind of saying that like he scores plenty of goals and stuff like that, but like if he scores 30 goals this season, is it 30 more goals for United? I definitely don't think so. It might be 7 or 8 more goals, but like he's certainly taking goals on other players, and I don't mean that in the kind of a sense. I think he's an excellent player, obviously, and my opinion of him doesn't really matter. But what I'm saying is that, does a forward scoring 5 points necessarily mean that they had the game of their life? I don't think so. So kind of mapping out for them what good football looks like, and I think that's maybe something that can be done in very simple terms. You know, for someone like I go back to head up, look forward, and stuff like that. But yeah, that for me, that's it. The number one I'd have on my list is enjoyment. You have to want to go. You're going to have days you don't want to go for whatever reason, but again, it comes back to, for me, it's all about, I'm happy with everything else. So if I'm happy with everything else and I'm enjoying it, like I really look forward to going. You don't want it to end. Excuse me.
Stevie, enjoyment. Paul said enjoyment there. Cathal said simplicity. Too many coaches giving complicated messages, talking too much, complicated drills that don't mean anything. This happens a lot, doesn't it?
Joe, had a friend called at the house tonight from West Belfast. He drove up, a man called Michael Jared Doherty, lovely man. He's writing, a young fella, he's writing his own books. That's Live, Love and Learn, the GAA books. And, you know, I had a great conversation the night. We sat with a cup of tea and with a great chat about everything, about football, about life. He's a teacher in West Belfast. You know, and he talked about, Joe, one of the highest levels of suicide in the whole of Europe, you know, in West Belfast, you know, and North Belfast. And he talked about some of the stories of some of the young lads he's brought through in coaching, you know, and he spent 10 years with his own club, intermediate club in Antrim, bringing these lads through. And he talked about how this year in the intermediate championship in Antrim, 10 lads that he brought through from like the age of 7 years of age, played in the Antrim senior or Antrim intermediate semi-final for the club this year, a club that was on the verge of obviously, you know, folding due to numbers and things like that. And we talked about coaching, and the same thing kept coming back, Joe. And I totally agreed with him. Relationships, building relationships, building positive relationships. And I'm at it in school every day of the week. Cal's at it in his own role. Paul's at it in his own role. It's relationships. The two lads are sitting here tonight, and I would like to think that I could sit and have a chat with these two lads or have a pint with these two lads, because they would have built relationships. I know my time with Cal was a lot shorter than my time with Paul, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is, Joe, that's what my coaching is all about. You know, I think 90% of coaching is, if you build relationships, you build a trust, you build a level of respect, and then you get more back. And my father used to say to me, son, respect works both ways. So if you give respect, you'll get respect back. And any player that I've been very, very fortunate to work with, Joe, I've always tried to build those relationships and show that level of respect. And I've always hopefully I've got it back in abundance, you know. And I think that's a big part of coaching for me, Joe, is being able to build relationships. But that takes time. Like Cal said, it takes time, you know. And, you know, over the last couple of years, I think it's been very difficult for coaches in club and county because of COVID. And I think it's been extremely difficult because even things such as like the social element of football, which is hugely important, because football, Joe, is a huge outlet for so many people. Like it's a massive outlet. It's a great talking point. It's a great starting point. You know, those nervous moments when you're sitting in a room or you're sitting in a bus or you're chatting to someone on a train or whatever, and it normally comes back to football. Well, did you see the game the other night, or did you watch that, or did you see that? And it's, you know, it's a huge talking point. Like, and you know, I think relationships, Joe, is just so important in coaching. And listen, you bring your own personality, you put your own stamp on things. Like, but you know, Cal made a couple of great points there as well, and so did Paul. You know, from a coaching perspective about, you know, gauging the room and, you know, coaching at that level and bringing it back and dumbing your coaching down, and Paul's simplistic message as well. So it's a mixture of everything, Joe, and everybody will have their own unique way of coaching and their own unique philosophy and on how they see themselves, and, you know, what separates them as a good coach, their set of values, their beliefs, you know. And that for me is so important. And that's something that I'll take with me, Joe, forever, is that sort of pride myself on building relationships with young and old, you know.
Yeah, it certainly is that rapport and that trust that you have to build with players. Lads, we'll just finish up here. Cathal, what does the future look like for you? I know you're obviously the games manager there with Connacht GAA. Are you thinking of going into coaching, maybe managing club teams, or maybe Roscommon or county teams further down the line?
No, well, I suppose through work, I'm only allowed coaching my own club. So what I'd be looking at, I suppose, like the youth area, I probably hope to get involved maybe next year with maybe an under 15 or under 17 team in the club. that type of thing. I suppose my young fellas come to the age now, we'll probably be starting doing some nursery work, that type of stuff. So I'd say that's what the coaching looks like, you know, in terms of club teams for myself. Look, we've lots of cool camps and academy squads across the 5 counties, and coach education, so there won't be any shortage of that type of work either, you know. So yeah, that's what it probably looks like for me.
And Paul, your secondary school teacher there, are you thinking of coaching club teams or even county teams at any stage?
Yeah, I think it's something that I would be interested in. At the moment, I had someone ask me recently, just pretty much the week after I decided to kind of hang up the boots, and it wasn't, they'd said they were thinking about asking regardless. I was coming a bit soon for me, really. I think I just need to put the feet up for the winter and just kind of, you know, think about what I want to do and relax, kind of just enjoy a bit of downtime. But yeah, it's certainly something in the future that I could see myself doing.
Okay, excellent. Okay, lads, thanks very much for coming on there, Paul and Cathal. Thanks, Stevie, my co-host as well. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.